I never imagined that the worst night of my life would begin with silence. Not screams, not chaos, just silence. The kind of silence that presses against your ears so hard, it feels louder than noise. I was lying in a hospital bed, my body aching, my head spinning, my heart pounding with fear. Machines beeped softly around me. White lights burned my tired eyes. I tried to move my fingers, but they felt heavy, distant, like they didn't belong to me anymore. And then one thought hit me harder than the pain. Where is my baby? I whispered. My voice came out weak, almost broken. A nurse leaned closer, her eyes kind but careful, like she was choosing every word. Your baby is safe, she said softly. You're both alive. Alive, that word should have made me feel relieved. But instead, tears spilled from my eyes. Because being alive didn't mean being okay. Just a few hours earlier, I had been driving home, one hand resting on my swollen belly, talking softly to my unborn child like I always did. Just a little longer, I had smiled. We'll be home soon. I never saw the other car coming. The crash was sudden, violent. The sound of metal twisting, glass exploding, my body thrown forward. Pain rushed through me like fire. I remember screaming. I remember darkness swallowing everything. And now here I was. Broken body, broken breath, broken trust. I turned my head slowly, expecting to see my parents standing beside me. My mother holding my hand. My father pacing the room, worried but present. But the space beside my bed was empty. No flowers, no familiar voices, no comfort. Just silence. Did my parents come? I asked. The nurse hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. They were informed, she said carefully. They know about the accident and about the baby. I swallowed hard. So where are they? The nurse looked away. That was the moment my heart cracked. Growing up, I always believed that love from parents was unconditional. I was wrong. My parents were strict, proud, obsessed with image and control. They believed children were investments, reflections of their success in society. And I had already disappointed them once. When I married for love instead of status. When I refused the man they chose. When I walked away from their perfect plans. They didn't attend my wedding. They barely spoke to me after. But when I found out I was pregnant, something in me hoped. Maybe a grandchild would soften their hearts. Maybe this tiny life would rebuild what was broken. I told them about the baby. Their reaction was cold. You made your choices, my mother said. Don't expect us to clean up the results. My father added. Still, deep down, I believed that when the baby arrived things would change. I was wrong again. A doctor entered the room. He checked my vitals, spoke calmly, professionally. Then he paused. There's something else you should know, he said. My stomach tightened. Your baby was born early due to the impact. We had to perform an emergency delivery. My breath caught. Is my baby okay? Yes, he nodded. Your child is stable. In the NCU. Relief washed over me, brief, fragile. But, he continued gently, we contacted your listed emergency contacts. Your parents declined to take responsibility for the baby. Declined. That word hit harder than the crash. What do you mean declined? I whispered. They said they were not willing to receive the child, he said. They asked us to contact someone else. I stared at him, unable to breathe. My own parents refused my newborn. While I was unconscious. While I was fighting to survive. While their grandchild lay in a hospital incubator. Tears streamed down my face, unstoppable. Not from pain, from betrayal. The nurse placed a phone in my shaking hand. Is there anyone else we can call? She asked softly. One name echoed in my mind. Grandpa. The man my parents barely spoke to anymore. Because he never approved of their cold hearts. The man who taught me kindness when no one else did. The man who told me, character matters more than reputation. I dialed his number with trembling fingers. He answered on the second ring. Hello, his voice was calm, steady. I broke. Grandpa, I sobbed, they won't take my baby. There was a confusion. Not hesitation. Just controlled anger. I'm coming, he said, and don't worry, child. This story isn't over. I didn't know it then. But those words were the beginning of everything. The beginning of justice. The beginning of truth. The beginning of a lesson my parents would never forget. And what Grandpa would tell them would change everything. When Grandpa arrived at the hospital, the room felt different. Not louder, not calmer. Just stronger. He walked in slowly, leaning on his cane, his shoulders slightly bent by age, but his eyes were sharp, clear. The kind of eyes that had seen betrayal before and never forgotten it. The moment he saw me, pale and broken on that bed, something hardened in his face. "My child," he said softly, taking my hand. His grip was warm. "Real? You survived?" I nodded, tears sliding down my temples. They didn't want the baby," I whispered. Grandpa didn't ask who. He already knew. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm, too calm. "Where is my great-grandchild?" he asked. "In the NICU," the nurse replied. "Take me there." The NICU was quiet. Machines hummed softly. Tiny lives fought silent battles behind glass walls. And there, in the corner, was my baby. So small, so fragile, wrapped in wires and hope. Grandpa stood there for a long moment, just staring. His eyes glistened. "This child was rejected before even being held," he said quietly. "But mark my words, rejection builds stronger souls than comfort ever will." He turned to the nurse. "I will sign whatever is needed," he said firmly. "This child is not unwanted." The nurse nodded, relief visible on her face. That was when I realized something painful. A stranger would have shown more love than my own parents had. Later that day, I learned the truth. While I lay unconscious. While doctors fought to save my baby. While Grandpa rushed across the city. My parents were sitting comfortably in their living room. Drinking tea. Discussing neighbors, talking about embarrassment. This is what happens when she refuses to listen. My mother had said. "She's always been stubborn." My father replied, "And now look," she scoffed. "A child born out of chaos. What will people say?" Not once did they ask if I was alive. Not once did they ask to see the baby. They were more afraid of gossip than of losing their daughter. That truth burned deeper than any wound. That evening, my father's phone rang. He almost didn't answer. Almost. "Hello," he said, annoyed. Grandpa's voice came through the line. Calm, steady, dangerous. "I'm at the hospital," Grandpa said. There was silence. "With your daughter," he added. More silence. "And with your grandchild." My mother snatched the phone. "What is this about?" she demanded. "We already told the hospital we are not involved." Grandpa chuckled softly. "I know," he said. "That's exactly why I'm calling." Something in his tone made my mother uneasy. "You should come," Grandpa continued. "Or don't. Either way, things are about to change." "What do you mean?" my father snapped. Grandpa paused. "The world is about to know what kind of parents you are." The line went dead. For the first time in years, my parents felt something unfamiliar. Fear, not fear of scandal, not fear of society, fear of losing control. "What is he planning?" my mother whispered. Grandpa was not a man who spoke without reason. He had built businesses from nothing. He had raised children during hardship. He had survived betrayal, including from his own son. And when Grandpa said things will change, they always did. Back in the hospital, Grandpa sat beside my bed again. "They think silence will protect them," he said quietly. "They think ignoring responsibility makes it disappear." I looked at him, exhausted. "I just want my baby safe. And you shall have that," he nodded. "But they will have something too." "What?" I asked. "The truth," he replied. "And consequences." I had never heard Grandpa speak like that before. Not angry, not loud. Certain. "For too long," he continued, "they have lived comfortably while hurting others. Tonight, like comfort begins to crack." I didn't know what he meant. But deep down, a small spark lit inside me. Not hatred, not revenge. Justice. Later that night, when the room was dark and Grandpa had stepped out, a nurse wheeled me closer to the NICU window. I looked at my baby, so tiny, so innocent. "I promise you," I whispered through tears, "no one will ever make you feel unwanted again." At that moment, I stopped waiting for my parents to change. I stopped hoping. And unknowingly, that was the moment the balance shifted. Because when hope dies, clarity is born. And clarity is dangerous. The betrayal is set. The power is shifting. Grandpa's plan is quietly forming. The next morning didn't begin with footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Echoing down the hospital corridor. I didn't have to look up to know who it was. My parents. They entered the room like guests who didn't want to be there. My mother's arms were crossed tightly over her chest. My father's face was stiff, emotionless, the same expression he wore during business meetings. No relief, no concern, no apology. Just judgment. "So," my mother said, glancing at the machines beside my bed, "you survived?" "Survived? Not are you okay? Not we were worried. Just survived." I felt something inside me go cold. My father cleared his throat. "We came because your grandfather insisted." Grandpa stood near the window, quiet, watching. "I told them the baby was born." My mother continued. "They made it sound serious." "But you seem fine enough," I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. "I almost died," I said softly. My mother shrugged. "You've always been dramatic." That was when Grandpa turned around slowly. And the room changed. "You refused your own grandchild," Grandpa said. It wasn't a question. My father straightened. "We refused responsibility for a situation we did not create. That child," my mother added, "was born from disobedience." Disobedience? Like I was a rule, like my baby was a mistake. Grandpa took a step closer. "Let me be clear," he said calmly. "That child was born from love. Something you two forgot how to recognize a long time ago." My mother scoffed. "Spare us the lecture?" Grandpa smiled. That smile scared me more than anger ever could. The sentence that froze them. "Do you know why I raised you differently from your siblings?" Grandpa asked my father. My father frowned. "What does this have to do with anything?" "Everything," Grandpa replied. "You were given more money, more trust, more chances." My parents exchanged glances. "You built your life on what I gave you," Grandpa continued. "And now you stand here pretending to be superior." He paused. Then he said the sentence that would echo for years. "If you think blood makes a family, you're wrong. Responsibility does." Silence swallowed the room. "You failed," Grandpa said simply. "Not as parents. As human beings." My mother's face flushed red. "How dare you?" "I'm not finished," Grandpa cut in. "You care more about what people say than what is right." Grandpa continued. "You care more about control than compassion. And now," he gestured toward me, "you are shocked that the world is starting to see you clearly." My father clenched his fists. "We don't need approval from anyone." Grandpa nodded. "That's good. Because you won't have it." "What are you threatening?" my mother asked sharply. "I'm promising," Grandpa replied. Their confidence cracked, just a little. Enough. The truth they never expected. Grandpa turned to me. "Do you know why your parents never challenged me?" he asked gently. I shook my head. "Because everything they have," he said, raising his voice slightly, "exists because I protected their reputation." My parents stiffened. "Every scandal, every mistake, every Pa continued. I buried them." Quietly, my mother's lips parted. "That's not enough," Grandpa said. "I'm done burying things." The air felt heavy, dangerous. "You have two options," Grandpa said calmly. "One, you accept your daughter and her child. Publicly. Honestly. Two, I step away." My father laughed nervously. "Step away from what?" "From protecting you," Grandpa replied. The laughter died. "You wouldn't," my mother whispered. Grandpa leaned in. "I already have." For the first time, silence. No one spoke. My parents stood there exposed, not as powerful figures, not as respectable people. Just two adults who had failed a test life gave them. Grandpa turned back to me. "You and the child will live with me," he said gently. "You will be safe." He looked at my parents one last time. "What you choose next," he said, "will decide how the world remembers you." They left without another word. No hugs, no apologies. Just fear following them out the door. When the door closed, I exhaled for the first time in days. Did I do the right thing? I asked Grandpa quietly. He squeezed my hand. "You did nothing wrong," he said. "You survived." That scares people who live behind masks. Outside the room, I could hear my parents arguing in hushed, frantic voices, and I realized something. The people who once controlled my life were losing control. The truth doesn't explode all at once. It leaks. Quietly. Slowly. Through cracks people didn't even know were there. The morning after my parents left the hospital, something strange happened. People started calling. First, it was my aunt. "I heard you were in an accident," she said carefully. "Why didn't your parents tell us?" Then a cousin. Is it true the baby was born early? Then someone from my father's social circle. We were shocked to hear your grandfather is handling everything. Each call sounded polite, curious, concerned. But underneath, suspicion. My parents had always controlled the narrative. They decided what people knew and what stayed hidden. If something went wrong, it was never their fault. But now, Grandpa wasn't fixing things. He wasn't correcting stories. He was letting silence do the work. By the third day, I was discharged. Grandpa brought me home, not to my parents' house. To his, the same house where I used to hide as a child when arguments at home got too loud. The same house that smelled like old books, tea, and safety. He had already prepared a room for me. And a nursery. White walls, soft light. A small crib by the window. I stared at it in disbelief. You did all this so fast, I whispered. Grandpa smiled. I should have done it years ago. That sentence hurt more than he knew. Grandpa didn't shout. He didn't threaten publicly. He didn't post anything. He did something far more powerful. He stepped back. No calls to smooth things over, no favors. No protection. For the first time in decades, my parents stood alone. My father's business partner called him that evening. I heard some troubling things, the man said cautiously. What things? My father snapped. That your daughter was hospitalized, the man replied. And that you refused involvement. My father laughed it off. Family matters are private. The man paused. So is character. The call ended quickly. Too quickly. That night, my mother couldn't sleep. People were talking. She whispered to my father. They always talk, he replied, annoyed. But this time it was different. Because no one was defending them. In their social world, silence meant guilt. The usual stories never came. The usual excuses weren't delivered. Grandpa's voice, the one people trusted, was absent. And when a trusted voice goes quiet, people start listening to the noise. 3 days later, my parents came to Grandpa's house. They didn't knock loudly this time. They waited. My mother looked tired. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled. Her confidence had softened. My father avoided my eyes. We just want to see the baby. My mother said. Grandpa didn't move. You didn't want to see the baby when it mattered, he replied. My mother swallowed. We made a mistake. The word mistake hung in the air. Small, weak, insufficient. I'll allow it, Grandpa said finally. But understand this. This is not forgiveness. This is observation. They nodded quickly. Desperate people always agree too fast. When my mother saw the baby, her face shifted. Not love. Shock. How small, she whispered. My father stood stiffly, hands in his pockets. Neither reached out, neither asked to hold the baby. That told me everything. As they stood there, my mother's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze. What is it? My father asked. She turned the phone toward him. A message from a family group chat. Is it true you refused your own grandchild? People are asking. Why didn't you tell us? My father's face drained of color. This was no longer a private matter. Watching them stand there, uncomfortable, exposed, something inside me changed. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel revenge. I felt clarity. These were not people who lacked opportunity, they lacked heart. And for the first time, I understood. I didn't need their approval to move forward. As they prepared to leave, Grandpa spoke again. You still have a chance, he said calmly. But chances shrink when pride grows. My parents nodded silently. Outside, I watched them walk away. They looked smaller than I remembered. That night, as I fed my baby, I realized something important. I had survived the crash. I had survived rejection. And now I was watching the consequences unfold. Not because I asked for revenge, but because truth demands balance. And balance was finally returning. Grandpa never believed in revenge. He believed in structure. Anger fades, he once told me. But systems remember. I didn't understand what he meant back then. I understood now. 1 week after my parents' visit, Grandpa received a call. My father wanted to meet. Alone. My father insisted. Grandpa agreed. They met in Grandpa's study, a quiet room lined with old books, framed certificates, and memories built over decades. No raised voices were heard, no arguments, just long pauses. When my father left, his face was pale. That same week, Grandpa began making changes, legal changes, financial changes, permanent changes. He didn't announce them, He didn't warn anyone. He simply corrected an imbalance that had existed for far too long. My parents had always lived with certainty. Certainty that Grandpa would handle things. Certainty that support would never disappear. Certainty that family name meant protection. They were wrong. Grandpa reviewed his will. And he revised it. He didn't cut them off in anger. He adjusted responsibility. Assets that were meant to pass quietly now had conditions. Trust funds now required values, not just blood. Family businesses were restructured. My father's authority was reduced. Control shifted. Not violently. Legally. My mother found out first. Her lawyer called her. There have been amendments, he said carefully. Amendments to what? She snapped. To your father. In-law's estate planning. Her hands trembled. You should come in. When my father arrived at the office later, the truth hit him like ice water. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was taken. But everything was no longer guaranteed. They didn't scream. They didn't confront Grandpa immediately. They tried something else first. Damage control. That evening my phone rang. My mother. I almost didn't answer. Almost. Sweetheart, she said softly. How are you feeling? I'm healing, I replied. That's good, she said quickly. We've been so worried. A lie wrapped in concern. We want to help, she continued. You and the baby deserve support. I waited. Sure enough. Perhaps we can talk about moving back, she suggested. Family should be together. Family. The word felt strange coming from her mouth. I'm fine where I am, I replied. Her voice tightened. You don't understand, she said. This situation is complicated. I almost laughed. When I told Grandpa about the call, he nodded. He said, they're not changing, he said. They're reacting. What's the difference? I asked. Reaction ends when pressure is gone, he replied. Change stays. 2 days later, my father came himself. He brought gifts, expensive ones. He placed them carefully on the table like offerings. We want to set things right, he said. But doing what? Grandpa asked. My father hesitated. Being involved, he said. Grandpa folded his hands. Involved how? He asked. My father looked at the baby, then at me, then back at Grandpa. Publicly. He admitted it was. Not Lummage. Grandpa stood. You refuse them privately, he said. So you don't get to reclaim them publicly. My father stiffened. You're destroying the family. Grandpa shook his head. No, he said calmly. I'm revealing it. That night Grandpa signed the final documents. He didn't smile, he didn't celebrate. He simply finished what life had started. Some lessons, he said quietly, are written in ink, not words. I expected to feel something dramatic. Anger. Satisfaction. Victory. Instead, I felt peace. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for them to become different people. I had already moved forward. My parents thought the worst had passed. They believed this was the end. They were wrong. Because Grandpa wasn't finished speaking. And the words he was about to share would reach much farther than any legal document. Grandpa believed silence was powerful. But he also knew when silence had done its job. The moment came on a Sunday afternoon. Family gathering, extended relatives, old friends. People who had known our family for decades. No drama was announced, no confrontation planned. Just a conversation. Grandpa decided not to stop anymore. The living room was full of laughter that didn't quite reach the eyes. My parents were there too. Dressed perfectly, smiling carefully, playing their roles. My mother held a cup of tea like nothing in the world was wrong. My father discussed business casually, nodding at the right moments. To anyone watching, they looked respectable. Normal. But I noticed something new. People were watching them differently. Listening harder, smiling less. It came from an aunt. Not loud, not aggressive. Just curious. So, she said lightly, how is the baby doing? The room quieted. My mother's smile froze for half a second. She's fine, she replied. Still very small. Someone else leaned forward. It must have been terrifying, a cousin added. The accident, I mean. You must have rushed to the hospital. My father cleared his throat. Well, things were complicated, he said. Doctors had everything under control. Complicated. That word again. Grandpa set his cup down. They didn't go. Grandpa said calmly. Every sound in the room stopped. My parents turned toward him sharply. They were informed, Grandpa continued, his voice steady. They chose not to be involved. My mother laughed nervously. Father, that's not. It is exactly that, Grandpa replied. Silence fell heavy, not awkward, serious. My granddaughter almost died, Grandpa said. My great-grandchild fought for life. And their parents refused responsibility. No embellishment. No emotion. Just facts. Facts are harder to fight than accusations, someone whispered, refused. Another asked. My parents spoke at the same time. It wasn't like that. You don't understand. Grandpa raised a hand. They were asked, he said. They declined. That was all. No insults. No judgment. Just clarity. People didn't shout. They didn't argue. They did something worse. They reconsidered. Looks were exchanged, eyebrows raised. Opinions quietly shifted. Reputations don't fall with noise. They fall with disbelief. We didn't want to interfere, my mother said, voice tight. Hospitals are stressful. A soft voice from the corner replied. So is childbirth. That one sentence ended the excuses. You had no right. My father snapped at Grandpa. This is private. Grandpa nodded. It was, he said. Until you made abandonment a choice. The word hung there, abandonment. No one defended them. I expected to feel exposed. Instead, I felt seen. Felt seen. I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't have to justify pain. The truth spoke on its own. People left earlier than planned. Goodbyes were polite but distant. Phone calls my parents expected didn't come. Invitations slowed. Respect quietly slipped away, in the car. My mother stared out the window. They'll forget, she said quietly. People always do. My father didn't respond, he knew better. Because power doesn't disappear loudly. It leaks. And once it leaks, it never fully returns. That night, Grandpa sat with me on the porch. You didn't humiliate them, I said softly. No, he replied. They revealed themselves. I watched the sky darken. What happens now? I asked. Grandpa looked at the house. At this point, he said, they decide who they become after consequences. For the first time, the story wasn't about revenge. It was about release. I no longer carried their choices on my back. They belonged to them now. Regret doesn't arrive loudly. It comes late. It comes quietly. And it comes when apologies no longer have power. My parents learned that the hard way. It started with small things. A cancelled invitation, a delayed phone call, a meeting that suddenly wasn't necessary anymore. My father noticed first. People who once returned his calls immediately now took hours. Then days. Then not at all. At dinner one night, he put his fork down. They don't look at me the same anymore, he said. My mother said nothing. She already knew. A week later, my mother came to Grandpa's house alone. No makeup, no confidence, just urgency. I need to speak to her, she said, pointing toward my room. Grandpa didn't move. Why? He asked. My mother's voice cracked. Because I'm losing everything. Grandpa's eyes softened, just a little. You didn't come when she was losing everything, he replied. Still he stepped aside. She sat across from me, hands trembling. I never wanted things to go this far, she said. I waited. I was scared, she continued. Scared of what people would say. Scared of losing respect. I looked at her. And I wasn't scared? I asked quietly, lying in a hospital bed alone. Her lips quivered. I didn't think. That's the problem, I interrupted gently. You never did? I'm sorry, she whispered. 2 words, late, heavy, empty. I don't need your apology, I said calmly. I needed you when I couldn't speak for myself. She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. But I didn't hold on either. 2 days later, my father came too. This time he didn't bring gifts. He brought anger. This has gone far enough, he snapped. You've made your point. I laughed softly. I didn't make anything, I replied. I survived. He slammed his hand on the table. You're destroying the family? Grandpa stood. No, he said firmly. She exposed it. My father turned to me. If you come back, he said tightly, we can fix this. Fix, that word again. Fix appearances, fix control their comfort. I stood up slowly. I don't need fixing. I said, I needed love. Silence. Then I said the sentence that ended it. You lost the right to call me your responsibility the day you rejected my child. My father froze. That was a line. Months crossed, never returned. For the first time, my father looked small. Old. Powerless. Not because of money, not because of reputation. Because he had nothing left to offer. No authority, no leverage, no love. He left without another word. That night I held my baby and felt something close to peace. Not happiness. Not triumph. Closure. I had stopped waiting for them to change. And in doing so, I had finally changed myself. You did the hardest thing. Grandpa said later. You stopped hoping for a version of them that never existed. I nodded. And now, I asked. He smiled softly. Now, he said, you live. They learned that a love can't be negotiated. A parenthood is a responsibility, not a title. And pride costs more than honesty ever will. But lessons learned too late still hurt. The house was quiet. The house was quiet. And for the first time, so was my heart. Some words don't shout. They settle. They wait. And then they change the shape of everything that comes after. Grandpa saved those for last. Months passed. Not weeks. Not days. Months. Life didn't explode. It didn't collapse. It simply rearranged. My baby grew stronger. So did I. The nights were long, but peaceful. The fear that once lived in my chest slowly faded. In its place grew something steadier. Confidence. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was building. My parents didn't disappear. They attended fewer gatherings. Their opinions carried less weight. Their names didn't open doors the way they once did. No one confronted them. No one attacked. People simply remembered. That kind of memory doesn't fade. One evening, Grandpa asked me to join him in the living room. They're coming, he said calmly. I knew who they were. My parents arrived together this time. No anger. No arguments. Just exhaustion. They sat across from Grandpa like children waiting for judgment. Grandpa didn't accuse. He didn't raise his voice. He spoke slowly, like someone carving truth into stone. You spent your lives protecting how you looked, he said, and lost sight of who you were. My mother lowered her eyes. You thought authority made you parents. Grandpa continued, but responsibility does. My father swallowed hard. Grandpa leaned forward slightly. You didn't lose your daughter because of this accident, he said. You lost her because when she needed you most you chose comfort over character. They flinched. But understand this, Grandpa added. She didn't take anything from you. He paused. You gave it away. Silence filled the room. Not painful. I won't force reconciliation, Grandpa said, and I won't reward regret that arrived late. He stood. If you want to be better people, he said, do it without expecting applause. That was it. No dramatic ending. Just a mirror held up and left there. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. I felt acceptance. Some relationships don't end in explosions. They end in understanding. Today my child laughs easily. She has never known rejection. She knows warmth. She knows safety. She knows love that doesn't depend on behavior or image. And that matters more than any inheritance ever could. Grandpa didn't give me revenge. He gave me freedom. Freedom from chasing approval. Freedom from waiting for apologies. Freedom from confusing blood with loyalty. Family is not defined by who shares your name. It's defined by who shows up when you're at your weakest. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't destruction. It's living well without them. They refused my newborn when I couldn't fight for myself. But in doing so, they taught me exactly who deserved to stay in my life.